They thought my show was too popular, and they didn't want me to be popular on a network other than the BBC or CNN. And so they essentially shut it down, thereby shutting me down by penalty of imprisonment. And I was a little angry about it, so I went around and I started telling people about it. Anybody who would listen, I would say, look, this is the situation I'm in, and it's very bothersome. And I got a lot of people, including the Society of Professional Journalists, who said, look, in a country like ours, the government doesn't get a chance to decide who are the winners and losers, who can report and who can do anything else. So they've invited me to actually speak at one of their forums, which I thought was cool. And then a very large newspaper here in the United States, in Washington no less, decided they were going to run a story on this. And essentially they wrote a story that essentially says the headline of, Rick Sanchez, former CNN reporter, challenging the Biden administration, hoping that the new Trump administration will change this law. And it was a legitimate story, telling the story that I've been telling you, that one day I was working and suddenly this was taken away from me and it was unfair. Perfectly legitimate story. And it was about to air, or pardon me, be published the very next day, and I get a phone call. Remember we talked earlier about a mysterious phone call?
Yeah.
Now there's this young journalist, nice young man, worked hard on the story, smart kid. And he says, Mr. Sanchez, I'm so sorry to tell you this, but the story that was going to come out tomorrow that you and I were both excited about it's been killed. They're not going to run the story. I said, why wouldn't they run the story? They said, well, because our managing editor, not my boss, his boss, apparently got a call last night from somebody, and they convinced him in that phone call that we should kill this story. And I said, can you give me more details? Do you know why? He goes, no, I don't even know who the person was who called him. And I don't usually work with my with the guy at the top. I usually work with my regular editor. I'm just a reporter, but I've never even heard of a phone call coming from the very top like that and canceling the story. So now, not only did I get a mysterious call that led to me losing my job at RT, now my just trying to share my story with people was being killed by another mysterious phone call.
Well, it was a neocon publication. So I'm from DC, you're not. So I happen to know the publication very well. And it's a neocon publication.
And we don't want to say it because we're a young man. I don't want to be fired.
It's not it didn't happen to me, so I don't have the right to divulge it. But it's a publication in Washington, DC that is resolutely neocon, and they're like, no, this is contrary to the story that we're telling. So
what you're telling me, and what we're coming to realize in this conversation, you and I, is that the State Department, who I know reached out to me when I was working at RT to kind of threaten or warn me not to work at RT, which is my choice and was taken away from me, also then followed up by calling a American newspaper to tell them not to cover me or tell my story based on what they needed as well.
Of course.
This is crazy.
It is crazy.
This is crazy.
And there is a conspiracy of temperament and worldview that is not explicit, and I doubt it's even like a true conspiracy, and that I don't know if there's communication between the parties, but the people who work at the State Department, the people who work at the Washington Post, the people who work at, every big news organization in DC and New York have the same worldview. And so they know that, telling your story, explaining how your First Amendment rights as an American were violated by the U.S. government is contrary to their interests as cheerleaders of the war against Russia. It'll help Putin. So we can't say it.